Well, namaste everyone. Welcome to this webinar. This is the fourth.
Namaste.
This is the fourth in our series. What we had covered last week, which is webinar number 3, is Panditji's Uttarapaksha in Reconstruction Chronology. And I had mentioned that he had divided history into 4 parts: the very ancient, the medieval, and the modern. So he divided it into 4 parts. And last week we covered the very first one, which is the very ancient Itihasa, which talks about Srishti. Now he says that spans from beginning of Srishti to the 6th Manu. And part 2, he said, was from the 7th Manu to the end of the 27th Mahayuga. And the third, which is the medieval, he said is from the beginning of the 28th Mahayuga until the Mahabharata war. And the last one is the modern one, which he said was from the Mahabharata war to the present times. So last week we covered number 1. About number 2 and 3, Panditji felt that they were adequately described in summary form in our Puranas and Itihasas. So he did not spend a lot of time on those. But the distortions, most of the distortions introduced by the mercenaries of the East India Company were in the modern Itihasa, which is from between the Mahabharata war and 1193. So you can see for this title over here, I put the date, and Panditji has calculated the date to be 3138 BC of the Mahabharata war. So the modern history, as he reconstructed it, starts with the Mahabharata war in 3138 BC and goes on to 1193 AD. So this is going to be our topic for today. And like last week, I would like to go a little slowly because there are concepts I'm going to start introducing. And I think it is important for us to understand those concepts so that we can actually apply them and understand how they were applied. So with that said, let me maximize my screen. Okay. All right. The first topic I want to spend some time on are Indian eras. The reason is, unless we understand how we used our calendars, it's going to be difficult to understand this content. So we did not have the Christian calendar in those days. We had our own calendar. I think I have made the point that the Western calendar and the Hindu calendar are so different, you cannot convert a date from one to the other. And therefore, we do understand they are different, but we also need to understand how we did our own calendars. Now, if you look at time, time is continuous. It does not have a beginning. It does not have an end. It just goes on continuously. We use calendars to mark important dates. And so today, I think the world is using the Christian calendar. So when we say we are in 2023, it is 2023 from Christ. Now, it's not clear whether it's from the birth of Christ or from the death of Christ because they don't tell us. But anyhow, let's not worry about those details. But the point is, we are 2023 years after Christ. So again, you see that the Christ is a marker on a timeline. Yes, for our own calendars. So the first thing I want to say is what I'm showing in this table here are the ones that were used from the Mahabharata war. There were older eras that have been omitted because the numbers are so large for the time duration, it is beyond the human and mortal comprehension. That is why I omitted them, but I've tried to provide a couple of names. So you talk about Brahmamana, Vaivasvatamana. So you talk about the lifespan of Vaivasvata, which is one Manvantara. Or you talk about the lifespan of Brahma. We looked at the duration of the Brahmanda and we looked at the time scale of Brahma. So those are also larger time spans that we will not concern ourselves with because we are looking only from the Mahabharata war. So we just want to keep this simple. So the point is, the first, Saka. What is the meaning of the word Saka? I have a couple of slides on this, but Saka is used to denote a calendar or era. So Yudhishthira era. Yudhishthira Saka. So you see in the second line, Kali Ira. So Ira is roughly equivalent to Saka. So you could say Yudhishthira Ira, you could say Kali Saka, and both of them mean the same thing. Then you have the Jayabhyudaya Yudhishthira Saka, Yudhishthira Kala Saka, Saptarishi Saka, Laukikabda, Lokakala, and Kashmir Abda. Then you have the Malava Gana Saka, you have the Cyrus Saka, and so on. Then the Sriharsha Saka, the Gupta Saka. So these are the very important calendars that were in use in Bharatavarsha from the time of the Mahabharata. So let us look at these one by one. The Mahabharata war ended in 3138 BC. And a few days after the war ended, Yudhishthira was crowned the emperor, meaning Chakravarti of Bharatavarsha. He was the Chakravarti of Bharatavarsha, and that was such a large, major, significant event. They started a calendar from that date called Yudhishthira Saka, meaning that calendar starts when at the end of the Mahabharata war. And it's only days after that that Yudhishthira becomes Chakravarti. So that is a calendar that we must be very, very conscious about. The second one is the Kali era. The question is, when did Kali Yuga begin? When did Dwapar Yuga end? And when did Kali Yuga start? And that again was a massive, major event. And because of that, we have a new calendar that starts with the beginning of Kali Yuga. So there is a calendar that started with the Mahabharata war. There is a calendar that started at the beginning of Kali Yuga. Then you have others, and I will try to explain each one of these one by one. So on the right, you can see the Kali Yuga actually happened, and this is very precise, at 2:27 a.m. on February 20th, 3001 BC. How are we able to be this precise? Because this is based on an astronomical event. And that astronomical event was, of course, it coincided with Sri Krishna's Niryana. And with Sri Krishna's Niryana, Dwapar Yuga ended, Kali Yuga began. But to signify that event, there were 7 celestial bodies in the Mesha Rasi, all in conjunction in one Rasi. And those kinds of events, one, they're astronomical, and two, they don't happen very often. And therefore, that is the reason we are certain about this date and time, that Kali Yuga happened at 2:27 on February 20th, 3102 BC. What it also means is this is an absolute marker on a time scale, which is why if someone says the Mahabharata war happened in 5561 BC, then they need to also be able to identify when Kali Yuga took place in their opinion. Because this is something that there is consensus. Everybody agrees that Kali Yuga is 3102 BC. So if anyone disagrees with the Mahabharata war and tries to put it 1,000 years before or after, then they have to reconcile the date of Kali Yuga with it. Now, what is significant about Kali Yuga? So when Dwapar Yuga ended and Kali Yuga started, we changed all our Panchangas. We changed our Nitya Sankalpa. So now the date is Pramadi Chaitra Sukla Pajami, which is Yugadi. Now, for the Telugu-speaking people here, we tend to call our New Year, the first day of the New Year, we call it Ugadi, which is wrong. The correct term is Samvatsaradi. The term Yugadi means the beginning of a new Yuga. Whereas what we are celebrating every year on Chaitra Sukla Pajami is basically the start of a new Samvatsara, so therefore the right name or term should be Samvatsaradi. This is another thing you must tell your friends and family and relatives, that the term Yugadi is not appropriate for Samvatsaradi, and Samvatsaradi is the correct term. Now, the point is that when the Yuga changed, our Nitya Sankalpa also changed. Because until then, our Nitya Sankalpa said we were in Dwapar Yuga Turiya Pade, which then became Kali Yuga Prathame Pade. So this is how our Nitya Sankalpa also changed, our Panchangas changed. Everyone okay with this so far? Because this is the part I want to go slow, so that because I'll be applying these and using these, so there should be no confusion at that time. So that's why I want to go slow so that you can understand this.
Durga Kota here. Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. The lectures, I mean, I've been attending for the last few ones only.
Hmm.
In the calendar, why? What is the purpose of having either parallel or sequential calendars? Like when I say parallel, is we already have a Yudhishthira Saka where we are able to date time, and then with the end of Dwapar Yuga, we are
Hmm.
having a Kali era calendar. Now,
Yes.
does this mean Yudhishthira and Kali both are running parallelly, or Yudhishthira has ceased to have any validity, and from there, in chronology, Kali has taken over? And purpose of moving, why don't we not have one calendar all through? That is
Yeah.
what the question.
Now, let's stay with that. I'd like to answer that one question first. So the reason is, um, it would be very confusing if we did not change the calendar. Now, so in other words, 3,000 years after Mahabharata, if you are still using the Mahabharata calendar and you say I'm 4,000 Yudhishthira Saka, then that forces people to calculate. And that's why you try to find more recent events that are significant. Again, um, calendars are not started for trivial and insignificant events. They are established for major events like the Mahabharata war, because the entire Bharatavarsha was participating in that war. Kali Yuga is a massive event because that is the end of one yuga. It also marks the Niryana of Sri Krishna and the start of Kali Yuga. So those are massive major events for which you start a new calendar so you know where you are with respect to that event. Then over time, other major events happen. So you do mark, actually, I have a slide on this. Anytime a Chakravarti is crowned, a new calendar is started to mark the reign of that Chakravarti. So, for example, Yudhishthira Saka started because Yudhishthira was crowned emperor of Bharatavarsha. So they started a new calendar for this emperor. Vikrama Samvat, when Vikramaditya became an emperor in 57 BC, they started the Vikrama Samvat calendar. And his great grandson, Salivahana, in 78 AD, also was crowned Chakravarti, not king, not Raja, but Chakravarti. And a new calendar started here. I have these on a different slide, but I hope that answers your question. The point is, you want to mark a significant event in time, and you want to be able to specify how many years after that event something else occurred. Any other
Perfect.
questions?
Perfect. Fantastic. I have one follow up question on that.
Yes.
Now, the science of calculating the days and the dates and the years we have passed ever since the new calendar, is
Yes.
that science of calculation consistent across all the calendars, be it Yudhishthira, Saka, or Kali era, or the ones which we followed previously? Is this
Yes.
consistent calculation? Then it makes sense. We just to name a calendar. And thank you for updating on that. Vikrama Aditya took over. Vikrama, this is something I would listen from my elders quite often, and that's
Mhm.
fantastic. That's good. And I would request all the members to give me 2 minutes towards the end of the meeting. I don't know. I have a few things which I would like to express. I'm strongly feel about a few things, so I don't want to interrupt it now. Thank you very much. You can continue the conversation
Certainly.
with us.
Certainly. So that is why we have these calendars. Each calendar signifies a major event in our itihasa. And we have a calendar associated with that itihasa. So usually what happens is historians will start using a new calendar when a new calendar is formed. So usually when the Vikrama Samvat calendar was created, that officially marked the end of the calendars before it. And similarly, the Salivahana Saka calendar, when it started, it officially marked the end of the previous calendars. So, in fact, let me take you to, I showed this on one of my slides, and it was a quotation by Bhaskaracharya in Siddhanta Shiromani. So, let me find that quotation and I will share it again. So, some of you have attended that talk, and some of you have not. But does anyone remember that I talked about a sloka from Siddhanta Shiromani of Bhaskaracharya? Uh, Please respond if you remember.
Uh, Unfortunate, I missed it.
Okay, so here at the bottom of this, Bhaskaracharya in Siddhanta Shiromani, he says, from the creation of the universe, 6 Manus, 27 Mahayugas, and in the 28th Mahayuga, the Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and in this Kali Yuga, 3179 years have elapsed to the end of Vikramasaka. So he is telling you from the beginning of Srishti, this is the amount of time that has elapsed to the end of the Vikramasaka, meaning when Salivahana Saka began, meaning one era ended and a new era started. So you can see how this is tied back to the calendar. And Bhaskaracharya was a great astronomer. Does anyone remember this, that we went over this?
Are we putting the slides on the group actually? Because my screen is
I'm
pretty
I'm not sharing the slides. But the point is, have you any question on the sloka itself?
No question, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So we've covered
one question on this Sri Krishna Nirnaya. Niryana. So that was everybody refers to that book for starting of Kali Yuga era. Like, is there like one book and one sloka that says about this Kali Yuga starting?
There have been many references. There have been many references that talk about this. The point is, are you trying to refute what the consensus opinion is?
No. I want to know if there is any book which the general public can point to say that yes, this book, this author like Veda Vyasa has said this, and hence Kali Yuga starts so and so. Like, is there some?
Here is the difficulty with that, because in addition to the Mahabharata, Vyasa is the author of all the Puranas too.
Yeah.
So I can give you a second book, but if the author is the same, then the content will be the same.
Yeah.
Right? So, but to answer your question directly, the Bhagavad Purana talks about that Kali could not set foot on this earth as long as the lotus feet of Vishnu were touching the earth. So that's a metaphor to say that as long as Krishna's feet were touching the earth, Kali could not enter. So, in other words, you have anecdotal information, you have astronomical information. You look at the Surya Siddhanta, it tells you in precise terms how long ago the Kali Yuga happened. Now, and then if you look at Sri Krishna's lifetime, you can also see that the end of that coincides with the beginning of Kali Yuga. Does that answer your question, sir?
No, but where is it written about that 7 celestial bodies in Mesha? Like, that book is what I'm asking about.
I have found that in Panditji's book. So I would suggest you read that book for more details and more information. So, I mean, because we have 45 minutes for this webinar.
Okay.
I don't want to go too far afield. I want to stay on topic, if you don't mind.
Got it. Yeah.
All right. So
yes.
The third era is the Jayabhyadaya Yudhishthira Saka, which is 3101, meaning 1 year after Kali Yuga. What is this era? Vyasa wrote the Mahabharata, and he started writing that Mahabharata 1 year after Kali Yuga, which is why they started a new calendar for Vyasa starting writing the Mahabharata. So although they created the era and the calendar, they quickly merged it into Kali Yuga because it is so close. So they stopped using it altogether. But I just wanted to point out that you will find 1 or 2 dates recorded in this Saka, which is why it's important, and that's why I put it in the table. Or actually, Panditji even wrote about it. I'm just a messenger bringing his message to you. Now, the Yudhishthira Kala Saka, also called the Saptarishi Saka, Laukikabda, Lokakala, or Kashmir Abda. All of these are synonymous. They are referring to the same era and the same calendar, and that calendar starts in 3076 BC. Now, the reason it starts in 3076 is to mark the Swargarohana of Yudhishthira. So that's why Yudhishthira Kala Saka, meaning when his life ends and his Swargarohana occurs, they create a new calendar to mark that event. And it's also called Kashmir Abda because Kashmir used this extensively. Kashmir used this calendar, so all the dates that you find in Kashmir, in Kalhana's Rajatarangini, are based on the Saptarishi Saka or Yudhishthira Kala Saka. It is not based on Yudhishthira Saka, it is not based on the Kali Saka. Everyone okay with that so far? Please respond, someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Yes.
So, yes, okay. Then the next era, which is important, is the Malavagana Saka, which is 725 BC. And here, this one in red is Cyrus Saka. Saka Nrupati Kala, Sakendra Kala, Sakabhupa Kala. So all of these again are synonymous. They are referring to the same calendar, and that date is 550 BC. So the reason I've highlighted that into red is to tell you that this is the Cyrus era, and it is about the Persian Empire, and that date is 550 BC. Now, why do we need this? Because astronomers have referred to it to identify dates in Hindu history, Itihasa. So Vriddhagarga references the Sakakala. Varahamihira, 400 to 500 years later, Varahamihira actually quotes Vriddhagarga's text on astronomy, which is the Garga Samhita. So Varahamihira wrote a text on astronomy called the Brihat Samhita. So in the Brihat Samhita, he is referencing Vriddhagarga's Garga Samhita and the quote that uses the Sakakala to identify a date in modern history. Kalhana references both Garga and Varahamihira and says, I agree with these two great astronomers, and he used that also in the Rajatarangini. And even Bhaskaracharya uses it. So the reason is in triangulation, we have to be able to deal with these dates, reconcile all references to it, and that's why this is very important. Of course, this Sakakala, not all people agreed on it. Some people disagreed, used their own interpretations, but by using those interpretations, they came up with a wrong date for the Mahabharata war. So, for example, Rao Bahadur P.V. Kane over here, who actually received a Bharat Ratna for his work on Indian history, misinterpreted Sakakala as Salivahana Saka, and the end result is he came up with the date of 2448 BC for the Mahabharata war. 2448 versus 3128. He was off by 700 years because he interpreted Sakakala incorrectly. Then we have Sriharsha Saka. What is the Sriharsha Saka? I want to draw your attention. This is Sriharsha Vikramaditya of Ujjain. Not to be confused with this Vikramaditya, after whom we have the Vikram Samvat calendar. This was Sriharsha Vikramaditya in Ujjain, and it's interesting to note that Sriharsha Vikramaditya's father, Chandra Sarma, went on and took sannyas and became Govind Bhagavat Pada, who was the guru of Adi Shankaracharya. Now you see, when you start looking at it this way, you start seeing the interconnections between historical personalities, and you have evidence about Shankaracharya that can corroborate other things. Shankaracharya was a contemporary of Mahavir Jain, so when you go through Jain texts, you can corroborate other events in Hindu Itihasa. Same way, Buddha was born Hindu, and his followers started a religion called Buddhism, but their texts also corroborate the dates of Buddha, and you see that Buddha actually is in the 19th century BC and not in the 4th century like Western Indologists would have us believe. Then the Gupta era was in the 4th century BC, and we saw that Samudragupta of the Gupta dynasty was actually the contemporary of Alexander, which is 327 BC. It was not Chandragupta Maurya, it was Chandragupta of the Gupta dynasty. That was the contemporary, and there was a calendar that was started when the Gupta dynasty began. Then you have the Vikrama Samvat. So Vikramaditya, also of Ujjain, he finally reconquers all of Bharatavarsha, reunites it under one umbrella, and then becomes a Chakravarti. And to mark that event, a new calendar was started called the Vikrama Samvat. And that was 57 BC. Then the last one, of course, is the Salivahana Saka. Salivahana was the great grandson of Vikrama. So when Vikramaditya died, his kingdom actually split into 18 kingdoms. His empire split into 18 kingdoms, and they were fighting with one another. And the rulers after Vikrama were actually weak. And so this persisted for 2 generations until his great-grandson Salivahana was able to reunite all of Bharatavarsha into one empire. And that was a major event because Bharatavarsha became an independent empire rather than a collection of kingdoms that were at war with one another. And to mark that event, we have the last calendar, which is the Salivahana Saka. So I wanted to spend some time on this because if I went fast, then it's hard to absorb, and then it's difficult to understand how these were applied. So any questions so far?
Who united India, entire Bharat? You mentioned, I missed to capture that.
Excuse me?
You just mentioned someone united the whole of Bharat.
Yes. Yudhishthira did that with his Rajasuya Yagam.
No, recently, just a minute ago, you mentioned.
Okay, no, I'm coming to that. So my point is, for the sake of completeness,
Okay.
I want to mention that Yudhishthira did that once with the Rajasuya Yagam and became a Chakravarti, and we started a calendar in 3138. Yes. Then Vikramaditya repeated that event in 57 BC.
Okay.
And he reunited, because what happened is Hastinapur as a kingdom lasted only about 100 years after the Mahabharata war. So once that major dynasty fell apart, then the empire split into kingdoms again. And it was not united again until Vikramaditya did that in 57 BC.
The ruler from Kashmir, same Vikramaditya.
No, he's from Ujjain. Vikramaditya is the emperor of Ujjain. Salivahana is his great-grandson, who was also the emperor of Ujjain.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Even the Gupta dynasty ruled over Ujjain.
Okay.
Sriharsha Vikramaditya also ruled over Ujjain.
Ujjain.
So
we keep seeing instances from Vikramaditya from Kashmir.
You see the East India Company people distorted history so much that they have maintained that there are 3 Vikramaदिtyas. Then finally they said Vikramaditya is a fictitious character. He never existed. That it is from the imagination of Hindu poets that they've written all these kavyas that talk about Vikramaditya and Salivahana. So let me take you back to our first webinar.
The Kashmir files also had the same thing. So even that has been distorted then.
Yes, because see, yes, and I'm sure they still call it mythology. So there are problems we have to deal with. So the point is, so he was not a Kashmiri, he was actually from Ujjain. Yeah, this one here, they actually removed kings entirely. And by removing kings entirely, what you find is, this is the one. Yes, they actually, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we do see your screen.
All right. So this is the bullet I was referring to, that they actually removed Vikramaditya, Salivahana, and 4 of their dynasties from history. They removed 1300 years of Bharatiya Itihasa and said these 2 are fictional characters, even though they had calendars established in their names. And calendars are not a trivial topic. I mean, calendars are created only for very, very significant events. So a Chakravarti being crowned is a significant event because he's reuniting all of Bharatavarsha. That's a very significant event. So to say that Vikramaditya and Salivahana, who had calendars created after them, were fictional is honestly a joke. So does that answer your question, sir?
But it only leaves me with more confusion. That's all.
No. The point is, we have not corrected our textbooks, so
Textbooks.
it is quite possible that Vivek Agnihotri is still using terminology and the historical facts that he was taught in school.
But it's very surprising that a person who is so patriotic and towards Sanatana Dharma could even do this small mistake.
But
That is the only thing.
yes, you have to give him some leeway because he is not focused on studying chronology like Panditji did.
Yeah, agreed.
He's a filmmaker. He's a filmmaker who found a topic and he tried to do the best he could in terms of researching. So I think we're getting far afield. The point is,
Okay,
our textbooks have not changed. I think we can all agree that our textbooks have not changed, and we still have the wrong dates in our history textbooks.
Okay, thank you.
But if you were to reconstruct it, Sruti and Smriti, this is what you find there. So
Now
everyone,
I can see that. Thank you.
All right. So the last two bullets, Buddhist and Jain texts, both of them use a Yudhishthira Saka, Yudhishthira era. Now, their Yudhishthira Saka, although it's confusing, if you look at the source, that the Buddhist texts use the Yudhishthira Saka that starts in 468 of the Kali era. And also the Jain text, their Yudhishthira era also starts in Kali 468. Everyone good with that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Now, so the point is, these were our calendar. This is what William Jones found when he started looking at our texts, our Sruti and Smriti. The dates they were referring to were the Yudhishthira Saka, Kali Saka, Kashmir Abda, or Yudhishthira Kala Saka, or Saka Kala, Sriharsha Kala, Vikrama Samvat. So the question is, there was no way that they could translate a date from the Western calendar into one of these calendars. So do you see the difficulty in translating a date from the Western calendar to any of these calendars and vice versa?
Yes.
But we had no problem. Indians had never had a problem with their calendars. The problem of chronology started after the British distorted it, which is only the last 200 years. More than 200 years ago, you don't see Indians doubting their calendars or their itihasa. You know, you have a calendar, a Panchanga, you open a Panchanga, you will find 3 dates in a Panchanga. You will find a date in Kali era, you will find a date in Vikrama Samvat, you will find a date in Salivahana Saka. I think I brought this up last week also. So please open a Panchanga. Yes, please open a Panchanga and look at the top, and you will find a date in the Kali Saka, you will find a date in Vikrama Samvat, you will find a date in the Salivahana Samvat. Yeah. So because of this difficulty between the Western calendar and the Hindu calendars, what you needed was, there was a word I used in my first webinar. Does anyone remember that? So you see this word here, synchronism?
Persian synchronism.
Yeah, well, not Persian, but the word synchronism is what I wanted to point out. That Panditji used Persian synchronism to connect the Western calendar with the Hindu calendar. So once you make a connection for a given date, then it becomes easy to traverse up and down the other calendar, now that you've got a date that both calendars agree on. Questions?
Durga Kota. Whenever a new calendar was introduced, was it on the day of the coronation, that is Chakravarti Michesin Rosa? Like did it actually start on the Samatsaradi, not Ugadi, as you're saying? Or did they start it?
Panchangas have to change. Now, back in those days, there were different places that had the responsibility and authority to keep, not only update the Panchangas, but keep them reconciled with other academic centers that built their own Panchangas. See, they were Panchangas. So Ujjain, for example, was a great university of the olden times. And they were the pioneers in astronomy. And they were probably the best when it came to astronomy and dates and calendars. And so Ujjain, of course, was a heavyweight, but then there were other universities across Bharatavarsha also. So all of these people would have to get together to do their own calendars, because there were regional dates that not every Panchanga had. So you have to look at regional Panchangas, but they all agree on the main major dates.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So India has several, Bharatavarsha has several Panchangas, regional Panchangas.
Yeah, well, I want to be careful using that term. The point is that when you talk about Kali era, Vikrama Samvat, those kinds of things, there is no disagreement. They all agree on where we are. It's just that if to highlight certain events, there may be an event that is more important, and we're talking about modern times now, the 20th century and 21st century. 20th century, the Dashara, Vijayadashmi for Bengalis is Durga Puja. It happens to be Ramana Samharam in some other parts of India. So you have these regional dichotomies. So even for Deepavali means something different in different parts of the country, but they all agree on the date. There is no disagreement on the date.
Okay.
And on how to calculate that date.
Yeah.
Right. So the question is synchronism. Synchronism is the word I was trying to find, and what you find. William Jones did the same thing. But what did William Jones do? Because he needed some way to connect two calendars. So he used Greek synchronism. And what did he use? He used Alexander's journey to the east when he came up to the Sindhu River. And he connected that, and that was 327 BC. So that is how William Jones was able to connect the Western calendar with the Hindu calendar at 327 BC. And then, of course, he started his distortions. So the point is, we do need synchronism to connect the two calendars. But what William Jones did is wrong. 327 BC is not the point to connect the two calendars. And so what Panditji did was use Persian synchronism, which we will get into.
I have one question here.
Yes.
Durga Kota.
Yes.
When I was in India, I took a lot of interest in the Adi Shankaracharya. And you just mentioned that, I know Gaudapadhyaya, that's the school of thought.
No, Govind Bhagavad Pada, not Gaudapadhyaya.
Govind Bhagavad Pada.
Yeah,
correct?
Adi, one moment. I'd like to make this correction. Adi Shankara's guru was Govind Bhagavad Pada.
Govind Bhagavad Pada.
Govind Bhagavad Pada's guru was Gaudapadacharya.
That's correct, Gaudapadhyaya. So according to your calendar here, this chronology, how many years ago, or which BC was Adi Shankaracharya born?
He was born in 509 BC.
509 BC. Okay.
But what Max Miller, the distortion Max Miller introduced is 788 AD. So if you go to the Sringeri Mutt, the Sringeri Mutt claims they follow Max Miller, and they will tell you that Adi Shankara was born in 788 AD. But
why is that Sringeri Mutt itself is doing the...
please let me complete this thought. But if you go to Dwaraka or Puri or Kanchi, you will find that they all agree on 509 BC. So
how about Kanchi?
We'll get into Kanchi also. They all agree. Sringeri is the odd one out, which says 788 AD. We'll get into that. Let's not go too far away from this topic.
You.
Yeah. So on this topic of eras, would you like for me to touch upon any of these eras and cover it one more time?
One question I have. Vijay here.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, this is Vijay Badabai. You mentioned all Panchangas, if you look up, they will start with Vikrama Samvat. Do they also have, how many years from Kali Yuga we are now? Or
yes. No. I want to correct what you said. I did not say they all start with Vikrama Samvat. But what I said was they have 3 dates.
Okay.
One date in Kali Seka, one date in Vikrama Seka, one date in Salivayana Seka.
Okay. And do they match all over, or even everything changes other than Kali's date?
No. See, Kali Yuga started 3102 BC. So today we're about 5,000 something from Kali Yuga. So the date in Kali Seka would be Kali 5,000 something.
Yeah.
Whereas Vikram Samvat was 57 BC. So we're saying about Vikram 300 something. Yeah. Salivahana Seka were about 2100 something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 1900 something.
Yeah. So my point is, I think because of destruction of all the history and culture, the only thing I can relate to is Kali era.
No. Wait a minute. I think you're making a sweeping statement that is not true.
Okay.
I'm saying if you open, you speak Telugu?
No.
Okay. If you were to open a Panchanga today,
Uh-huh.
you will find dates in all three eras on that Panchanga.
Okay.
All three. So
Okay.
they're giving you all three for a reference because some people prefer one over the other.
Okay.
So the point is, it's a calendar. It's just a calendar. Whether you use ADBC, whether you use Kali era to identify 2023, now 3102 plus 2023 is how much? That would be 5125.
Well, the way I see it is there is one big timeline which is using that Manvantara and Kali Yuge, Prathama Pade, all those things. But then all these sakas are different calendar which starts at zero at different timeline, right? But that is the one main timeline.
It's not a saka, it is a saka.
Saka, okay.
You put too much emphasis on the first syllable. So the point is, I told you that calendars are started when there's a significant event.
Yeah.
And so the point is, nobody is forcing you to use this. If you want to use the Kali era, people understand what the Kali era is. And you give a date with using that as a reference, people can calculate because how to calculate is well known. So the point is that people collectively decided that these events were significant enough to start a new calendar. Because otherwise you're getting into very large numbers which can be confusing.
No, but Kali Yuga, before that we say in our daily prayer, Manvantara, Pada and all.
No, sir, you're confusing two things.
Uh-huh.
The question is a Nitya Sankalpa versus what the calendar should use.
Okay.
So these are two different topics. So yes, a Nitya Sankalpa counts the time that has elapsed from the beginning of Srushti.
Yes.
Which is different from how much time has elapsed since the Mahabharata war.
Okay, but what we do in Nitya Sankalpa, that is the original timeline, and all these are mapped to it. That is how I visualize.
No. Sir, you're using words that can confuse people. So
okay.
The point is, Nitya Sankalpa talks about the time that has elapsed from the beginning of Srishti.
Okay.
And that is why it's a Nitya Sankalpa. You must do it every day. So because every day you're incrementing by 1 day.
Yeah.
Right. So your Nitya Sankalpa tells you exactly how much time has elapsed till that date from the beginning of Srishti. But that is not a calendar because that would be a very complex calculation if you have to calculate from the beginning of Srishti.
Okay.
Okay, so let me, since you brought that up, let me take you back to.
Sir, if you allow me, I want to say something to Vijay here.
Yeah.
Yeah, please introduce yourself, sir, first.
Yeah, sure. Lakshman here, Vijay. So basically, you are trying to mix up the two things, Vijay. One thing is the Nitya Sankalpam, another is a calendar. We are talking about the calendar, whereas Nitya Sankalpam is whenever you perform some puja, right? So it is basically when somebody performs the puja, we are bringing the identity of the person with the three things actually. One is with the timeline, one is with the place where we are, another one is your family history. So these three things we are bringing up. Out of that one time, when we are talking about the timelines, then we are saying that okay, in so and so Shvetavaraha Kalpa, Vaivasata Manvantara, Kali Yuga, like that they are talking. That's timeline. Another one is about the place, means like Jambu Dvipe, Bharatavarshe, Bharatakande,
Yeah, yeah,
Merur, Dakshin Digbage. That is about the place. And the
yeah.
third one is about your ancestors, like, your grandfather name, your father name, your name, like that. So, like that, with these three entities, before performing a puja, we are making a sankalpam, so that whoever is performing the puja is exactly that person is actually giving that whatever the rituals to the god they are giving, and we are getting whatever the in return we need to get, we'll get that. So that is a different topic. So
Yeah,
what topic we are
thank
discussing?
you. Thank you. But I want to bring this back to the date. So on this slide, where you might see my cursor, Panditji calculated in 1944 that this is the time that had elapsed from the beginning of Srishti. 195 crore years. Think about the precision if we had to use that to calculate today's date and put that on a calendar. And
No. So what from this date itself? Yeah, we can go back from today for the beginning of Kali Yuga, the last Kali.
No, sir. The calculation can be done. And how to calculate is well known. But the point is, if you want to be able to relate to recent dates. So if you are saying, again, Nityasankalpa says you're in the 28th, Ashtavimsati Tame Kali Yuga. So if you're in the 28th Kali Yuga, why do you want to base a calendar from the beginning of Srishti? You want to maybe base it based on the beginning of Kali Yuga, because that gives you a date that is closer to you. How often in your lifetime, how many times have you dealt with dates that before Kali Yuga began?
Yeah, got it. But
no, do you understand the difference? So the point is, they're not in disagreement. If you look at them, both of them are consistent. It's just that you're putting a marker at Kali Yuga. I'm just putting a marker. It's just a calendar. Time is continuous. You can go back as far as you want. But the point is, when you go back that far, you want to create a reference date, which is the beginning of that calendar.
So from today, if we use the original timeline, can we go back to that date?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay.
So the question, yes. So again, so yes, you can. The question is, do you have a date, and can you corroborate and prove how many years after a bigger event it occurred? Then you can put it on a timeline.
Yeah. I think I was a little confused about how the marker of because the origin is not a fixed point. Going back from today to last Kali Yuga
but isn't that true of the Western calendar also? I mean, they started a new calendar after Christ, and they did that in the 7th century AD.
Yeah.
They didn't do it right away. They waited till the 7th century AD to create the AD-BC calendar. Okay, what calendar did they have before that? What was the reference for that? So why are all these questions aimed only at the Hindu calendar? Why is it nobody has these objections about the Western calendar?
Yeah, and they don't even have zero in their calendar, right? 0 year.
Right. So something to think about. So the point is, our calendars are not in disagreement at all. It's just that I want to deal with small numbers, so I will pick an event closer to me in time.
Okay. Makes sense. Actually, numerically also, clerically also, it's not possible to record such a length of numbers and explain it also. We would spend half the time only in explaining the year.
Yep. And let's say, what kind of precision can you have when you're dealing with 200 crore years as a number? +1. How much is +1? How do you represent that in such a large number?
I think the topic has been beaten. I think the topic has been beaten to death. That we cannot take a 200 crore year to write to explain to kids. He will run away. Okay, that is clear. And there is consistency. It's when one calendar ends and we started with another calendar, and it is as simple. The only confusion for me, Durga Kota, which I'm saying, is when we say that 7 AD, which I was not even aware until now. You mentioned, when the Christ was born, the Christ was dead. When did it start? To that extent, I don't know how we are referring to BC, our calendar. Did we take it from the date of the Christ birth, or were we taking it from the death of Christ?
Right. So now you see the problem, because anything that the West says we accept as gospel. Anything that an insider to our tradition says, you ask for proof and you challenge him.
Yes.
We saw that right here.
Yeah, actually, sir, Sudarshan here. even birth of Christ is not is refuted by some of the Westerners only. Now earlier what they used to call Christian era now is being called common era actually. So there are
No, no, no.
disagreements in.
That is out of political correctness. Where,
Yeah.
no, for example, Panditji wrote about this 70 years ago. Look at the last bullet on this slide.
I have requested 2 minutes towards the end because there
No,
are
but
some.
you see this, sir, I'm trying to make a point here. The last bullet
Yeah.
on the slide, Panditji, 70 years ago in 1949, challenged the arbitrary Christian calendar, which was established in 532 AD. But since that was not a focus of his, he just pointed this out, wrote about one small chapter, and left it there. So the point is, challenges that you're reading about today are not new because these have been written about 70 years ago. So this was already known 70 years ago. It's just that it was not in the mainstream. And so people who bring it up today are not the original thought leaders that thought up this problem, is all I'm. Yes, because all of his books have been out of print for 70 years. So everything that I'm telling you is from 70 years ago. So if somebody comes up with some of this information, I'm saying it was already known 70 years ago. Yes.
Durga Kota.
Yes. So what I will do before you ask your question, what I will do is we will end here because that way we have completed one topic. So we will introduce the eras. Maybe this is a good time to stop and we can spend a little time taking questions. So Durga garu చెప్పండి.
Okay.
ఒక చిన్న రిక్వెస్ట్
వంశీ గారు అది చెప్పబోతున్నారు.
Let me just interrupt. This is Srinivas actually managed to join after a few missed sessions. Thanks, Sastry Yanamandra, for continuing to enlighten all of us. On behalf of Hindumitra, I really appreciate your efforts. I think what we should do is, I think Durga Kota has a couple of minutes to share his views, which he requested. I think in future, perhaps we should allow our speaker to complete his session and then save our questions till the end. I think it will help newcomers as well to kind of appreciate the talk and then hear to the question and answer. So hope we can do this. Otherwise, it's a brilliant kind of interaction that I'm seeing. A lot of people have a lot of knowledge on the subject and very great level of curiosity as well. As we meet every week for the Hindumitra Satsang anyway, so we would really appreciate if you can join us again. I would really appreciate if all of you can pick up topics of your choice and be presenters. That will really help all of us. It will be a nice kind of interaction that we can all share. Yeah. So let's stick to the topic at hand and make your views heard.
Yeah, and also Sudarshan here. And also I think we can post our questions in the WhatsApp group. And I think Shastri ji can take his own time and then can respond to us, or like we can maintain some kind of like a previously asked question, because like sometimes, right, a newcomer might join, he might ask a question which has been already answered by Shastri ji in the previous sessions. So if we can document those, right, maybe we can read those for the newcomers, and then maybe like I mean, like you have a question which is already answered, so no need to again ask Shastri ji for the same answer again.
No, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. So whatever you can ask interactively during the session is welcome. Anything that any question that comes to you after the session is over, that's the reason we created the WhatsApp group. So please post your questions there and I will try my best to answer all of them.
Yeah. Shastri ji, do you mind if I take the, I mean, I want to go through all the recordings and then like probably note down all the questions, find answers from the presentations, and then share a document so that like it will be useful for newcomers